Hottest frontline sectors, Pokrovsk, is already 19% out of Ukrainian control, but the Russians haven't finished either. Angelina Jolie had barely left Kherson when the Russians attacked the city. There are reported casualties. Will Ukraine retake Crimea and Donbas? Recent successful strikes on occupied territories hint at that possibility. Nuclear war. What to expect from the Kremlin's nuclear rhetoric and what responses the United States is preparing. Hello, this is Ukraine Today. I'm Viktor Kolotai, and here we try to bring you the latest, most relevant information about Russia's war against Ukraine. If you haven't yet, subscribe, like and hit the bell so you're first to know what's happening in Ukraine and around the world today. We'll start with events from the past 24 hours along the line of contact. My colleagues prepared the detailed reports.
Breaking news for the occupiers. According to local social media channels, after a drone strike in Simferopol, the Kremneft oil depot in the village of Bitumnoye is reportedly on fire.
It should be noted that after the Ukrainian drone strikes on the temporarily occupied territory of Crimea, 3 fuel and lubricants facilities are burning. Key fuel and energy infrastructure facilities in the temporarily occupied territory of Crimea, which are currently involved in supporting the logistics of the Russian occupation army, have come under attack by Special Operations Forces drones. This particular oil depot is considered to be one of the most important and key sites for the purpose of storing various types of fuel as well as essential lubricants, and accordingly, it plays a significant and crucial role in the overall material and technical supply structure of the facility.
Drones attacked one of the largest power plants in Russia, the Kostroma State District Power Plant, GRS. Reports indicate explosions and a fire at the facility.
This power plant essentially supplies electricity to all the central regions of the Russian Federation. Accordingly, it is currently involved in providing electricity primarily to enterprises of the Russian military-industrial complex. It should be noted that this power plant essentially supplies electricity to all the central regions of the Russian Federation. Therefore, strikes on this facility, which is a legitimate military target on the territory of the Russian Federation, have not only military and economic significance, but above all political and ideological implications as well.
In addition, drones visited the Lukoil Volgograd Nefteperorabotka oil refinery, which is also considered significant for the occupiers' army. And this is a video from the Special Operations Forces. It shows the destruction of an enemy storage, assembly and launch base for Shaheds at the Donetsk airport. It is noted that more than 90% of the drones launched by the Special Operations Forces reached their targets. Pokrovsk is not encircled and is not under enemy control. Most of the city is a gray zone where both the Ukrainian armed forces and Russian positions are present, according to deep state analysts.
There are also ongoing and accordingly successful actions to unblock the logistics of the armed forces of Ukraine. Special units of the Special Operations Forces, the main intelligence directorate, the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, and other components of the Ukrainian Defense Forces have been deployed to the city. In addition, the grouping of Ukrainian Defense Forces in Pokrovsk has been reinforced with operational reserves and supplemented with armored vehicles.
In this footage, fighters from the assault regiment Skelya returned the Ukrainian flag to its rightful place, namely on the building of the city council in Pokrovsk. This confirms that the city stands firm, just like all of Ukraine, and will surely withstand all the trials prepared by the occupiers.
Ukrainian forces report that 19% of Pokrovsk city territory in Donetsk region is either gray zone or controlled by the occupiers, with more of it being a gray zone. The hardest situation on Pokrovsk and Kupyansk direction. See the next piece of details.
In one day, there were 276 combat clashes at the front. And in the hottest area, Pokrovsko, Ukrainian defenders stopped hundreds of attacks.
Pokrovsk, we continue to destroy the occupier, and I want to especially acknowledge the special forces of the SBU CSOA, who are systematically and very effectively destroying Russian occupiers and their equipment in the Pokrovsk area, as well as in the city itself.
The General Staff says Ukraine's armed forces are successfully repelling enemy attempts to gain a foothold in the city.
The enemy, just so you understand, in the year and 2 months, actually even longer, that they've been trying to take Pokrovsk, has already lost more than 200,000 of their soldiers there. The Russians' losses are colossal.
Despite the fact that Russian media are loudly claiming the capture of Pokrovsk, Ukrainian soldiers are showing a different reality.
Plus, you are the best, you are the best.
Ukrainian fighters returned the Ukrainian flag to the city council building in Pokrovsk.
They advanced into the building, cleared it, eliminated the enemy there, and raised the Ukrainian flag.
Nevertheless, Russia is not giving up its attempts to capture and encircle the city.
Just as we maintain control over the entire 15-kilometer zone for all logistics and ammunition supply, the enemy also maintains control over their own 15-kilometer zone. The situation in Pokrovsk is stable. I cannot say that we currently have any problematic issues, or that Pokrovsk could be encircled. Our assault units are conducting counter-offensive actions, clearing enemy positions, reclaiming territory, and straightening the defensive line.
It is reported that holding Pokrovsk is only a matter of a few days or weeks, but Ukrainian forces are still determined to hold the city for as long as possible.
I can say one thing with absolute certainty. We are, without a doubt, truly in a very good and favorable position here in Pokrovsk. This is something I am confident about. We are maintaining an active defense. We will hold the city as long as it can be held, until all the infrastructure is destroyed. Our enemy is working to the point of exhaustion. I want to point that out. That is why all of their offensive ideas have led to the complete and widespread destruction of cities and towns. That is why we will hold Pokrovsk for as long as it is necessary, for as long as it makes sense to do so.
For 13 months now, Putin has planned to take control of Pokrovsk, but something has gone wrong. That is why, for the Russians, capturing the city now carries even more symbolic significance than tactical value.
Our enemy is suffering disproportionate losses. Let me repeat once again. In just over a year, he has already lost more than 200,000 of his soldiers in the Pokrovsk direction, including equipment, both armored and lightly armored vehicles. They have also lost helicopters and airplanes. Our guys shot them down there.
It's also no secret that the forces on the battlefield are far from equal. Russia uses the tactic of assaults by small groups every day.
The enemy infiltrates the territory of Pokrovsk only with small sabotage groups. They move in groups of 1 or 2 people gathering at a certain point. Then 2 more camels show up, also dressed as civilians, carrying some bags or duffel bags. That's how it is. These camels bring in weapons, ammunition, and everything else that's needed.
But what's also interesting is that the Kremlin is sending people to this front who are completely unfit for combat.
Hundreds of videos are appearing online showing that generals are sending the wounded into battle for the city. That's why the fighters have nicknamed Pokrovsk the City of the Nullified.
But in Kupyansk, the situation is a bit different. There, fierce fighting is also ongoing, but Ukrainian units have managed to regain control over part of the city's built-up area. However, it's still too early to say that the situation is fully under control.
The situation in the Kupyansk direction is much better. Some of our professional drone operator units, who are highly skilled and specially trained for complex missions, have now arrived at the location. These operators provided essential support to our armed forces, working closely with our infantry and our assault troops. Their expertise and coordination were instrumental in helping to stabilize the situation on the ground. By working together, they ensured that the area was secured and that any immediate threats were managed effectively. As a result of their combined efforts, they were able to take full control of the entire riverbank, maintaining a strong and secure presence along the water's edge. They eliminated all the occupiers who tried to swim across it.
Let us recall that back on November 1st, Putin was planning to celebrate the capture of Pokrovsk and even intended to go there himself.
However, the visit, which was supposed to be a show of Russia's strength and a challenge to Western countries, was cancelled.
The Bunker Grandpa got angry and decided to throw all his forces at Pokrovsk. Only, of course, not his own, but those of his citizens.
Today, the Russians shelled the bus station in Kherson. Preliminary reports say 2 civilians were wounded, a woman and a man. Remember, just a few days ago, American actress Angelina Jolie visited Kherson. Photos of her under anti-drone net appeared online. Such security measures are necessary. In that video, you can see occupiers aiming at the most crowded places in Sumy city to cause as many casualties as possible. In doing so, the Kremlin only confirmed that Russia is using terrorist methods. Probably for that reason, the EU will no longer issue multi-entry visas to many Russian citizens. The European Commission adopted that decision. From now on, citizens of the aggressor country will have to get a visa for each individual entry into EU countries. This is Europe's attempt to protect itself from the negative influence of Russian agents who have slipped in everywhere. For example, the newly elected Speaker of the Czech Parliament, Tomio Okamura, removed the Ukrainian flag from the Czech Parliament building. The blue and yellow flag had been hanging there since Russia's full-scale invasion began in February 2022. This same speaker previously proposed reviewing all permits for Ukrainians to stay in the Czech Republic and has used xenophobic arguments as if Ukrainians are taking jobs from Czechs. Believe me, for a Ukrainian abroad, it is much harder to get a job than for local, for obvious reasons, such as language, for example. Those statements are nothing more than populist political games exploiting domestic problems. Not all Czech MPs supported the newly elected speaker and his ideas. After a while, 2 Ukrainian flags appeared on the parliament building. We sincerely thank the Czech people for their support.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Russia could lose influence if the United States intervenes. For example, Bloomberg reports that Hungary, via its state energy company MOL, the country's only oil refiner, has declared readiness to stop buying Russian oil. Remember, Hungarian Prime Minister Orban is soon meeting with President Trump. European armies are preparing to confront Russia. Poland said these are the most dangerous times since World War II and is launching mass military training for its citizens. The Guardian reports that the UK said it plans to take part in peacekeeping operations in Ukraine, deploying everything from fighters to infantry. Nuclear rhetoric is ramping up. In the US, officials are discussing moving nuclear-capable missiles to Europe, while Russia is threatening new nuclear tests. My colleagues investigate how far this could go.
In the background, Speaker One inhales. The doomsday clock is nearing midnight. After Putin refused to accept Trump's terms for ending the war in Ukraine, Russia and the US started brandishing their nuclear clubs. The White House and the Kremlin began considering conducting nuclear tests.
All this nuclear hysteria is directly connected to the Trump administration's efforts to end the war in Ukraine at this moment. The Russian Federation is trying to use the topic of possible nuclear tests as the last argument of kings in the process of carrying out its own plans to end the war.
During a meeting between Putin and the Russian Security Council, Defense Minister Andrei Belousov suggested to the dictator to prepare for full-scale nuclear tests, calling it a response to the actions of the United States.
The United States, at the end of this year, it is planned to adopt a new Dark Eagle medium-range missile system with hypersonic missiles that have a range of 5,500 kilometers. And in the future, the deployment of this system is planned in Europe and the Asia-Pacific region. The flight time of such a missile from German territory, where this missile system is planned to be stationed, to targets in central Russia would be about 6 to 7 minutes.
In reality, it was Putin and his cronies who first set the wheels of nuclear escalation in motion.
The creation of the Burevestnik made it possible to conduct tests of the Poseidon. There is simply no equal to this weapon. The president personally and directly oversaw the implementation of this project, from start to finish. We can see the result, an increase in the country's defense capability. And today, those abroad who wish us harm should be preparing to approach our Supreme Commander-in-Chief with a bow, just to make sure this weapon is not used.
The statement by the US president about possible nuclear tests, as well as the launch of the Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missile, were responses to the threats posed by the Burevestnik and Poseidon.
Russia conducts tests, China conducts tests, but they don't talk about it. You know, we are an open society, we are different. We have to talk about it, otherwise you'll write about it yourselves. They don't have journalists who would write about it. We will conduct tests.
Nuclear tests are a serious step. Officially, the superpowers have not conducted them for more than 30 years. Moscow last tested its atom in 1990, the US in 1992. The key document in the matter of mutual deterrence between the two nuclear superpowers is the bilateral treaty between Russia and the US, New Start on Mutual Reduction and Monitoring of Nuclear Arsenals. The document is valid until February 2026. But in 2023, the occupying country unilaterally suspended the treaty. Currently, in nuclear matters, China has the greatest influence on Russia.
Beijing has not yet had its final say. And let me remind you, it was precisely the reaction of official Beijing at the time that put an end to the Russian Federation's attempts to destabilize the international situation by potentially using tactical nuclear weapons on Ukrainian territory.
It is no coincidence that after meeting with Xi Jinping in South Korea, Donald Trump announced work on a denuclearization plan involving the US, Russia and China. According to experts, if Moscow does not abandon its nuclear rhetoric in the near future, not only the Americans but also the Chinese will begin to put pressure on the Russian authorities.
Well, in addition to the corresponding military pressure from the United States on the Russian Federation and targeted responses, one should also expect, accordingly, diplomatic efforts from official Beijing.
Some experts believe the recent successful strikes on occupied Crimea and Donbas signals preparations by Ukrainian defense forces for their deoccupation. Arguments supporting this view are in the next video.
A unique operation that lasted for months ended with a spectacular explosion in the middle of Donetsk. According to locals, nothing like this has ever been seen before in the occupied territories. Where did the strike land, what was destroyed, and most importantly, what did the Ukrainian armed forces use?
Judging by the special effects and the massive explosions, Flamingo missiles were used.
So let's go through everything step by step. Last night, a powerful explosion rocked Donetsk, after which, according to eyewitness videos, a fireball rose into the sky, resembling a nuclear mushroom cloud, and windows were blown out in buildings several kilometers from the epicenter. Right now,
the windows were blown out.
Actually, this is the Oktyabrski airport area. A large ammunition depot, missiles hit there. There is no official information yet, but people are already talking about an ammunition depot. I watched the video. It's spectacular. Most likely it really was a very large missile or shell depot, because in the video, the explosion looks like something out of a sci-fi movie or a computer game. And then there was a second explosion. You could clearly see this glowing, rapidly expanding shockwave. So it was a very successful strike on the Donetsk depots.
a bit later, some clarity on this issue was provided by the head of the UAV systems of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Robert Magyar Brudi. According to his information, the strike hit a large depot of Shahed-type drones, where warheads were also stored.
The targeting of this complex objective turned into a months-long, painstaking intelligence operation pieced together from small fragments. That night, it was carried out using appropriate strike assets by the Special Operations Forces and the missile troops of the Ukrainian Defense Forces.
Analysts note that despite the Shahed's long flight range, it was extremely important for the Russians to keep the drone depot close to the front line. After all, when the occupiers launch UAVs just a few dozen kilometers from the line of contact, the Ukrainian armed forces simply have no time to respond quickly. As a result, the drones carry out their terror in frontline cities and also strike at the forward positions of our troops.
Disrupting the logistics of supplying shells, missiles and drones to the Pokrovsk direction, to Pokrovsk itself, is exactly what matters to us now. This is very important for us right now.
However, our command chose not to disclose what exactly the defense forces used. One thing is certain, drones definitely took part in the attack. But something else followed them in.
As the footage from there shows, it was clearly not just drones at work. The UAVs apparently were distracting the local air defense, but the final blow was delivered by something resembling a rocket. It could have been a drone or possibly a missile.
The fact that missiles were indeed used is also supported by Magyar's reports about the participation of Ukraine's missile forces in the attack.
I don't think the Shahed warehouse was unprotected, that it was just some hangars. Most likely, they were probably talking about some kind of underground bunker. And that's another reason why I think these were Flobings. Of course, they could have used Storm Shadow as well. Storm Shadow would have been suitable here too. They have an anti-bunker capability. Nevertheless, the scale of the detonation shows that, at least that's how it seems to me. If you look at the first second, the explosion there was clearly bigger than just a couple 100 kilograms of Storm Shadow warhead.
So yes, most likely it was our Ukrainian Flamingos. By the way, this is already the third time just this week that they've inflicted massive damage on the Russians. But in Crimea, such power wasn't needed, so drones were sent to attack the peninsula. In occupied Simferopol, a fire broke out at an oil depot around 2:30 in the morning. It is believed to be the Krimneftezbit facility in the area of the village of Bitumnoye. There were also reports of 4 strikes in Gvardeyskoye, after which smoke rose into the sky. There, the hits likely targeted the local thermal power plant, which temporarily ceased operations.
And finally, the occupiers cringe. We all know Russia does not shy away from any method, even the most clumsy. The Russians disguised themselves in Ukraine uniforms and began to make threats in broken Ukrainian to Erika Kirk, the wife of American politician Charlie Kirk, who died in the US on September 20th.
If you will speak what your husband speaks, call to give Ukrainian lands to the Moscows, stop helping Ukraine, you will die. Guard your neck, Erika.
For viewers who don't know the language, it might look like a real message from Ukrainian forces, but its grammar and the way it spread online reveal its origin. We urge all our viewers not to be deceived by Russian lies. Thank you all for watching. If you haven't yet, hit like. Thank you for your support, strength and inspiration to Ukrainian defenders. Glory to Ukraine.